This happened last fall, and even now I don't quite know how to explain it. I work from home, doing tech support for a small software company, which means I'm often alone during the day while my partner is at work. We live in a pretty quiet neighborhood just outside of town. Not fancy, but peaceful. The kind of place where everyone nods to each other while they walk their dogs and rarely lock their doors during the day. It started with small things I didn't notice at first. A few days in a row, I'd wake up and the back door would be unlocked. Not wide open or anything, just not locked. At first, I blamed myself. I figured I must have forgotten to lock it the night before. But after the third time, I started to feel uneasy. I was certain I'd locked it the night before because I'd made a mental note of it. Still, I didn't mention it to my partner. I didn't want to sound paranoid. Then one day while I was working, I thought I heard a noise coming from the backyard, like metal scraping softly. I checked the camera we had above the back door, but the motion alert hadn't triggered, and there was nothing in the playback. Figuring it might have just been the wind, I let it go. But later that same week, I noticed something really strange. It was around 2 p.m. I was making coffee in the kitchen when I noticed the door to our shed was cracked open. That shed had been shut tight for months. I hadn't used it since the fall. It doesn't even have anything valuable in it, just old tools and gardening stuff. Still, I figured maybe wind or some animal pushed it open. I walked outside, slightly annoyed, and closed it again, this time pulling the latch and making sure it was shut properly. The next morning, it was open again. This time, I told my partner. They were concerned too, but we both agreed it was probably a kid from the neighborhood messing around or maybe an animal. I locked it with a small padlock I had lying around just to be safe. I even checked the inside before I locked it. Nothing but cobwebs and lawn chairs. That was a Friday. The following Monday, I woke up to find the lock lying on the ground in 2 pieces, snapped clean in half like someone had used bolt cutters. I swear my stomach dropped right there on the porch. The inside of the shed looked untouched, until I noticed something in the back corner. There was a blanket and a small water bottle, and next to that, a crumpled wrapper from a protein bar. Stuff we didn't own. Someone had been sleeping in our shed. I called the police. They came out, looked around, and took a report. They said it was probably a homeless person, maybe passing through, and that they'd patrol the area a few times over the next few nights. But there wasn't much they could do unless the person came back. That night I didn't sleep well. I kept getting up to check the backyard, refreshing the feed from our back door camera over and over. Nothing. Nothing. Still nothing. But around 3:30 a.m., I got a motion alert. I opened the app, heart pounding. Someone was standing on our back porch. They were just standing there, not moving, not knocking, just staring at the door. The camera quality was decent, but not great in low light. Still, I could see enough. It was a tall man in a hoodie, with what looked like some kind of cloth wrapped around the lower half of his face. He didn't try to open the door. He didn't ring the bell. After standing there for about 30 seconds, he walked off into the dark. I called the police again and sent them the footage. They showed up 20 minutes later, searched the area, and came back with nothing. We were officially freaked out. We got new locks installed, added more lights, even a second camera for the backyard. For a while, nothing happened. Almost 2 full weeks of quiet. Then one night, something changed. It was 2:11 a.m. I know the time because that's when the alert hit my phone. I opened the feed, expecting to see another porch encounter, but the camera hadn't been triggered by the porch cam. It was the indoor camera, the one facing our living room. I stared at the footage in complete disbelief. A man, the same man, was inside our house. He had his hood down this time, and though the lighting was dim, I could make out his face clearly enough. Sunken eyes, hollow cheeks, greasy hair plastered to his forehead. He didn't look drunk. He didn't look lost. He looked intentional. The footage showed him walking past the camera and toward the stairs, toward our bedroom. I grabbed the bat I kept in the closet and woke up my partner in a panic. We locked the door and called 911 immediately. We listened, frozen, as we heard floorboards creak out in the hallway. Quiet but unmistakable. The operator stayed on the line while we whispered everything we could. I thought I heard him outside the bedroom door at one point, just standing there. I almost opened the door out of sheer panic, but something told me not to. Police arrived in under 10 minutes. They found the man hiding in our attic crawl space. He had climbed up there when he heard the sirens. No one, not even the police, could figure out how he had gotten into the house. Every door was locked. Every window was shut. No signs of forced entry anywhere. But he had been inside for who knows how long. They arrested him on the spot. Turns out he'd been living in our shed for at least a week before we even noticed. From what they gathered later, he'd picked our house at random. He didn't know us. He wasn't after anything specific, just obsessed with the house, with being inside it. He had a notebook in his backpack filled with notes, times we left, lights that were on, what we'd been watching on TV, what we were wearing. The scariest part, one page just had a single sentence written over and over again. I live here now. I was working late as a DoorDash driver, doing my usual night shift. It had been raining nonstop for hours. Not a light drizzle, but a full-on downpour. Thick sheets of rain blurred the windshield, and wind gusts shook my car every few minutes. Nights like that usually meant fewer deliveries, but also less competition, so I stayed out. It was almost midnight when a delivery request came through. It wasn't far, maybe a 10-minute drive, but it was out toward the rural part of town where street lights are rare and houses are spread out. I almost skipped it since it was a hand-it-to-customer order, and I didn't feel like getting soaked. But the tip was good, and I figured I could tough it out just one last time before heading home. The GPS took me out of town and down a narrow, winding road surrounded by trees. The rain got worse the farther I went, hammering against the roof of my car, creating a steady roar that drowned out everything else. The wipers couldn't keep up, and visibility was awful. I slowed down, gripping the wheel a little tighter with each turn. Eventually, the GPS said I'd arrived, but there was no house, just a long, muddy driveway vanishing into the woods. I double-checked the address. It matched. The order note said, "Drive all the way down the driveway. House is at the end." I didn't like it. There were no lights, and the rain made everything look distorted, ghostly. But I'd been to similar places before, so I took a breath and started down the drive. The trees arched overhead, turning the road into a dark tunnel. Rain dripped through the branches and pounded on the roof. After about a minute of creeping forward, I saw a house, small, worn down, and completely dark. No porch light, no lights inside. It looked abandoned. I parked, left the engine running, grabbed the food, and ran through the rain to the front door. Water soaked through my hoodie in seconds. I knocked, hard, and waited. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I was about to just leave the bag on the porch when I heard something. A splash. Behind the house. Not a small splash like water from a gutter. This was heavy, like a foot hitting wet ground. Then I heard it again. Someone moving slowly through the rain. I turned around and scanned the trees. At first I didn't see anything, just blackness and rain. But then, I caught movement. A figure halfway behind a tree near the back corner of the house. They weren't trying to get my attention. They were watching me. I felt a jolt of panic. I backed off the porch and started walking briskly back to my car, trying not to run. My hand was already in my pocket, fumbling for the keys even though the engine was running. I didn't look back until I got to the door. He was standing in the middle of the driveway, soaking wet, head slightly tilted, not moving, not saying anything, just staring. I got into the car, locked the doors, and shifted into reverse. As I started backing up, he didn't move. He just stood there in the beam of my headlights, rain pouring off him like he didn't even notice. I steered around him, tires slipping a little in the mud, and didn't look back again. I made it back to the road, heart pounding, unsure what I'd just experienced. Later that night when I got home, I marked the order as undelivered and left a vague report about the house being dark and nobody answering. I didn't mention the man. A few days later, I saw a local news post online. A woman had gone missing that night, last seen near that same rural area. Her car had been found abandoned off the main road, less than a mile from the driveway I had gone down. Police asked the public for tips. I ended up calling them and telling them everything. The address, the house, the man in the rain. But when they followed up, they told me that property had been vacant for over a year. No utilities, no registered residents. They searched the area but found nothing. Rain had washed away any tracks. No leads. No sign of the missing woman. And no explanation for the man I saw. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd hesitated, if I'd taken longer getting back to the car, if I'd said something. I think about the way he just stood there, completely soaked, not even reacting to the weather. I don't do rural deliveries anymore. Not in the rain, not at night, not ever.